Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. His truth is marching on. Alrighty, everybody. Welcome back to another week of Modern Conflicts. Hope you guys enjoyed the first class with Ukraine. And yeah, today we're going to be talking about the Yemen Civil War. Now, I remember on Vision Days I asked if you guys knew about the Yemen Civil War. I'm pretty sure none of you said that you knew about it. And then when I asked if you knew about Yemen, I think there might have been like 5 of you who said you actually knew what the country Yemen itself was. So, kudos to those people, by the way. But if you don't know about Yemen or like anything about it, then I will give you a quick rundown about it right now once I'm done making this flag because I really like flags, okay? So it's great. So anyway, now we get to actual Yemen. So, oh, sorry, that's for later. Um, so Yemen is this country right here, located in the Middle East, just for reference, USA's. Over here, great country. Great country, anyway. So, yeah, Yemen's right here. It's right at the bottom of the Arabian Peninsula. Saudi Arabia is right here. Egypt is right here. And Europe, Russia, China, they're all around here. You notice Yemen is located right here on the Red Sea. It actually, uh, this maritime route from China to Europe, and then oil from the Middle East that goes to Europe actually all comes past Yemen in this strait, the Bab el Mandeb Strait. We actually looked at it in my first class. So you see, Yemen is on the entire eastern side of that strait. So if there happened to be, oh, I don't know, a war, then they could hypothetically close that down. We'll talk about that later. But yeah, that's where Yemen is. Before we talk more about it, I have to let you know a few things about the country itself. And the first thing is the ethnicity. So, you might already know that the Middle East is predominantly Islamic or Muslim. That's their religion, really. And you might not know this, but there's actually 2 main branches to the Islamic faith, and that is the Sunni and Shia branches. The main difference, they're pretty similar, but the main difference is the Sunnis believe there is no successor to the Prophet Muhammad, and the Shias believe that Muhammad actually did choose a successor. I think it was his nephew or something like that, and that is passed down generation to generation. And yeah, they're not that different, and in day-to-day life, they don't really notice the differences all that much. I mean, back in the day, they would pray together in the same mosques, even though some of them are Sunnis and some of them are Shias. It's not that much of a difference, but in the political world, it can become very much of a difference because, just one example, Iraq right here, that is a terrible outline of it, but that's okay. If you'll notice, it's split between the Sunnis in the north here and the Shias in the south here. What you might not know is that all of Iraq's oil is down here in the south, and the Shias have control of that, and so they control the government. Sunnis feel left out, and then political chaos, as we see all the time. You'll notice that a lot of the Middle East is dominated by Sunnis, especially some of our major countries like Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Turkey. The only country that is a major majority of Shias is Iran, and we will get into Iran a lot in this video. But you'll notice Yemen down here is actually split between the two pretty evenly. If you'll see here, they're 56% Sunni, 44% Shia. Um, and you'll notice the Shias are mainly congregated here in the northwest of the country, and then the Sunnis are spread out in the bottom. Fun fact, actually, during the Cold War, Yemen was actually divided into a North and South Yemen, and then in the 1990s, they decided to unify together, and so now you have just one Yemen. Um, let's see. So that is the ethnic background of Yemen, really. Before we get into the war itself, you need to understand one more thing about world politics, and that is the proxy war. Now, I will just read this for you. Proxy war is conflict in which foreign countries with competing interests battle it out by supporting opposing sides in otherwise domestic conflict. That was a terrible highlighting job, so I'm sorry about that. But if that is too wordy for you, that's okay. So proxy war is essentially two countries that don't fight directly. They support opposing sides in a war, and that is how they fight. One major example is the Korean War during the Cold War. So you see, North Korea and South Korea did most of the fighting, but they were both separately backed, the North by the Soviets and the South by the Americans. Sorry. But the Soviets and Americans never actually did much fighting against each other. It was just uh, the two supporting opposing sides. And most recently, we studied the Ukraine conflict. America kind of using Ukraine as a stand-in to fight against those dirty commies in Russia. Not commies anymore, but that's okay. So Iran and Saudi Arabia, that is kind of what this situation is. It's a proxy war between Iran and Saudi Arabia. Why? Well, they have two main ideology differences. Iran, they have an Islamist republic, which is very anti-monarchy, and Saudi Arabia is very much a monarchy. You actually have Saudi Arabia is a monarchy, the United Arab Emirates is a monarchy, Qatar is a monarchy, so they all feel very threatened by Iran. So yeah, they feel like the revolutionary ideas of Iran could spread to the rest of the Middle East, and then they're out of power, which is fatal for them. But that is basically the background of this conflict. So now we actually get into the conflict itself. Let me remind myself how I wanted to start this. Okay, so back in the day, there was this president of Yemen. I do not remember his name, and I'm not going to look it up. But he was the president of Yemen for about 30 years or something like that, all the way back to like the 1980s or something like that. But he was the president, and let's see. Yeah, he was the president for a long time in Yemen. Then, when, as I said, Yemen used to be divided, then they reunified. This guy remained president until about 2011 or something like that. What happened in 2011? Well, it's a fun story. So, it starts in this country here, Tunisia. Uh, this dude, random dude, in protest of the local government where he lives, he decides to burn himself alive, and that was so compelling to a lot of people that they decided to start revolutions all across the Arab world. Uh, Egypt's longtime president was ousted from power. Libya's longtime president was ousted from power, and they are still fighting a civil war there. Syria, the current president there is still fighting for control in a devastating civil war, which we will talk about in week 4. And yeah, that'll be fun. But Yemen was not exempt from this. There was lots of calls for this president to step down. In some of these other places, like in Libya, the president actually was murdered. So this president, he decided he would step down in exchange for the fact that he wouldn't be prosecuted for any of the terrible stuff he did. he didn't do a ton of terrible stuff, at least not by Middle East standards. I mean, uh, when you talk about that, but it turns out after he stepped down, it came out that he was actually embezzling a ton of money, a lot of relief effort that came in from America, and a lot of money that America gave him for cooperation in the war on terror over here in Afghanistan. And how much was it? Well, it came out to about $30 billion in American money. So, if you're wondering how much that is, it is this much. $30 billion. That would have put him in the top 10 most richest people in the world, to put that in perspective. So he embezzled that much amount of money. Um, so yeah, he was ousted from power. His vice president actually took over for him, and he was looking to make some reforms. And he did make a few reforms, but this is where we get into some of the ethnic stuff that the complicated ethnic stuff that we were talking about earlier. So, back when this other guy was president, there were some disagreements between them and the Shia majority area. And the Shias, they decided to make a faction that they called the Houthis. So there was a little bit of a war in about the 2010 area, something like that, 2011, from the Arab Spring that we just talked about here. Uh, and so during that conflict, the Houthis actually managed to get a little autonomous region for themselves, which means that they kind of got to govern themselves. And so they were happy for that. But then the other guy gets ousted from the presidency. Vice president comes in. He's the president now. He starts making some reforms. And one of his ideas is that he is going to kind of break up Yemen into a bunch of districts or kind of like that. And so they'd kind of be a loose confederation or something like that. But the problem with that is that the Houthis here, they would no longer be getting subsidies from the government to their own, I don't know, to fund their government. So that would be cut off in that plan. So, of course, they don't like that because everyone loves money. So they decided to go to war over that because money is just that important. Um, in the opening days of the war, the Houthis actually made some pretty big gains. They actually managed to take over the capital, Sana'a. We're going to go with that. Sana'a in a few weeks, actually, maybe a month. And so they have this much carved out. Yemen is trying to fight back against them. Let me remind myself where I was going with this. Yeah, so Yemen's trying to fight back against them. Um, Eventually, in about a month's time, they managed to come all the way down here to the Gulf of Aden, down here on the southern shore. Mr. Vice President Man, he was in Sana'a here, but then he fled to this town called Aden. He basically designated it as the new capital while it wasn't under Houthi control. Then, when the Houthis took it over, he decided to flee to Saudi Arabia, and that's where he remains for most of the time during this story. But anyway, the Houthis have taken a lot of land in the previous North Yemen, or just in the west of Yemen here, and that shocked a lot of people, most particularly Saudi Arabia. Now, this is where things get interesting. So, on the ground, you really only have, at this point, you have Yemen, and then you have the Houthis. So, those two fighting against each other. Just let me draw real quick. So yeah, there you go. So those two that's the start off of the war. I want to mention here that there was a third faction introduced decently early, and that is none other than Al Qaeda. How lovely. So if you notice here, Al Qaeda, is listed in this beautiful map I found on the internet. ISIS is also listed here if you know what ISIS is. Nasty people. I don't have them listed on the sign up sheet that I put on the blog. They weren't a major factor in the war, and they're also dead now, so there's that. But if you want to sign up for them, you can put that in. But Al Qaeda, if you don't know about them, they were founded in Afghanistan as a terrorist organization back in, I don't know, like the 1980s or something like that. So long before the Yemen Civil War started in 2014. Uh, some of their most famous stuff, well, they were famous for a lot of things, but most famous was none other than this right here. So there we go. That's the last time I will open that and traumatize you guys. So they decided to get involved here, and while they were fighting against the government of Yemen itself a little bit, they had a major disagreement with the Houthis because they don't really like Iran very much. And actually, Iran was providing support, allegedly, they were providing support, but it's kind of obvious that they were, to the Houthis from about day one. So Al Qaeda was fighting the Houthis and also the government of Yemen. So now it's a three-sided conflict, and during the war, they would kind of like carve out little pockets in the eastern half of Yemen. They got a big one down here a while ago, but I think Yemen took that back recently. Um, but yeah, once the Houthis took over all of western Yemen, it got the attention of Saudi Arabia. Now, why would it do that? Well, as we talked before, this shipping lane that Saudi Arabia needs to keep control over. Now, you might be wondering why. Well, let me tell you. Sorry, I didn't mean to erase that one. So Saudi Arabia, they got a lot of oil. If you remember your stat sheets in oil production, Saudi Arabia is number 2 and number 8 in gas worldwide. So they got a lot of oil. It is mostly located over here on their eastern shore. But how are they going to get that to their customers mainly in the West and America? Well, they do have an oil pipeline that travels from east to west like this, so then they could take that, go through Suez, down to Europe. But it can only handle limited supply. So the best route is to go through the Strait of Hormuz here and then back around the Gulf of Aden and the Arabian Peninsula and back up through the Red Sea. The problem with this is that there are two main areas, well, two problems for them to deal with. First, Iran here, they could just shut down the Strait of Hormuz here. And even if they don't do that, if there is an Iran puppet state here, aka the Houthis, then they could shut down the Bab el Mandeb Strait, effectively crippling Saudi Arabia's economy because it is very heavily dependent on oil. So Saudi Arabia is terrified about that, so they have to keep the peace down here. And so they decided to do just that in about, what was it, 2017, maybe 2015, 2017. They decided to lead a coalition with an intervention into Yemen. Now, I said a coalition because they weren't the only ones. You had the United Arab Emirates here. They decided to join in. Qatar decided to join in. Egypt decided to join in. Sudan decided to join in. Morocco decided to join in. And most notably was America. They didn't actually send troops there, but they decided to give support and the good old monies to this coalition. And they all sent troops, fighter jets, whatnot, to fight in Yemen. So now you got the Houthis backed by Iran, you got Al Qaeda just sitting by themselves, and then you got Yemen backed by this huge coalition of countries. I'll get to them in a second. So yeah, the Houthis are not looking great at this point, if you would agree with me. So, how did Saudi Arabia decide to get involved? Well, first off, you had Egypt and Sudan. They decided to give in ground troops, and they were used to basically go try and take back land. What Saudi Arabia did was they decided to mainly, yeah, they just took those bombs and did a. There you go. They decided to just try and drive the Houthis into the ground. And so they decided to run an air raid after air raid over and 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 over. Have I got my point across? Because I'm tired of drawing blue lines. But anyway, so they made this massive air raid campaign, and it kind of worked. They were actually able to get a little bit of land back here in the south, and they were able to retake the city of Aden, and that's now the quote unquote capital of Yemen. But it did come at quite a cost. During all of these air raids, the Saudis managed to strike multiple civilian targets. So there were a lot of people who died who probably shouldn't have died. Probably somewhere in the thousands of people. So yeah, those are all civilian casualties. This angered a lot of people because you can't just go around killing people. Well, normal people, if they have guns, then go ahead and kill them. But no one likes to just kill innocent civilians. That's not an okay thing to do. So then eventually have places like Morocco decided to pull out. If I do that one more time. There we go. Morocco decided to pull out. Sudan decided to pull out. Qatar was actually forced from the. Oh my goodness. They actually left the coalition too. And so the United States, they actually decided to stay in support of it back in 2017 or 2019, 2020, something like that, when Donald Trump was president. There were calls for him to stop supporting Yemen. He didn't. He decided he designated them as a terrorist organization and kept supporting them. Joe Biden comes into office, immediately takes the Houthis off of the terrorist organization list, and then stops funding the war in Yemen. So now you're just down to Egypt and Saudi Arabia. Now you might be wondering what the UAE is doing. Well, the UAE, United Arab Emirates, they did something a little weird because they decided to not pull out of the war, but they decided to support a different faction. Do you remember me telling you that Yemen, during the Cold War, they used to be divided between North and South? Well, there arose another faction in this war called the Southern Transitional Council. That's a lame name. But they decided that they wanted to reinstate the South and North Yemen thing because I guess that was so great. And so they decided to put their lot into the war. And they did. They are very much not aligned with the Houthis. They don't like the Houthis, but they're also fighting against the government of Yemen. So now the look of the war looks a little something like this. So you got Yemen fighting against the Houthis, who are fighting against Al Qaeda. And then you got Al Qaeda fighting against the government of Yemen, who is also fighting against the Southern Transitional Council. And the Southern Transitional Council is fighting against the Houthis, who are fighting against them. But the Southern Transitional Council, they're also fighting against Al Qaeda because no one likes Al Qaeda. So, yeah. And then you also got all of these places pulling out. USA, they pulled out. Qatar, they pulled out. Morocco, they pulled out. Sudan, they pulled out. Egypt, they decided to stay in. Why would they do that? Well, give me a second. UAE, they decided to back the Southern Transitional Council. Egypt is still deciding to support Yemen. If you remember back here, with the shipping lane. Suez Canal is up here. That is a major, trying to find the word, major source of revenue for the Egyptian government. And if the Red Sea down here is blocked, then, excuse me, then ships don't want to come through the Suez Canal, and then they lose a bunch of revenue, lose a bunch of money. Then, yeah, no one likes them to lose money, so they decided to keep supporting them. But yeah, now it looks a little something like this. Let's see, where was I going with this? Right. This is where we get to our good friend Israel. Now, I remember I asked on Vision Days that how many of you knew about the Israel War. I think most of you did, or at least the majority of you. Israel, of course, is fighting Hamas, aka Palestine, and then most recently they started fighting Hezbollah in Lebanon. Here, let me pull up the map. So you got Israel right here, then you got Hamas down here in Gaza, then you got Hezbollah up here in Lebanon. We're gonna study that later in week 5, but essentially, Hamas and Hezbollah are both puppets of Iran. So Iran's supporting both of them, and they've been launching rockets into Israel, but that's a discussion for another time. And the Houthis are also a puppet state of Iran, and they also don't like Israel. You want proof? Well, here is their flag. This is the actual flag. Hold on. There we go. This is the actual flag they use, but the translation into English is this: Allah is great, death to America, death to Israel, a curse upon the Jews, victory to Islam. Now you see why maybe Donald Trump didn't like the Houthis. Not defending him, except I kind of am. And you can also see why they don't like the Jews, because Arabs don't like Jews. In case you didn't know that already, which you should. So, but there's one problem for the Houthis if they want to fight Israel. There's a bit of a gap. So, what did they decide to do? Well, they decided to, let me see how I can explain this. Decided to take any ships in the Red Sea that are traveling this way. You got a lot of ships going through that way. But they decided if it is tied to Israel in any way, which means that either the crew is Israeli, or they're flying an Israeli flag, or the owner of the ship is Israeli, then they will decide to pirate the ship, or they will destroy the ship, which I think both they have done. I at least know the pirate thing. And so, effectively, they have done Saudi Arabia's worst nightmare in blocking off the Red Sea, because there's a lot of shipping companies who don't want to go through that because they're literally getting missiles fired at them. And so, I mean, why would you want to go through that? And so they decided that they want to go around Africa up this way to Europe, or they just decide not to go at all. And that very much hurts Saudi Arabia's economy, because you need ships to be able to bring your sweet, sweet oil over to Europe. And so if they don't sell the oil, then their economy suffers, which is very pleasant. But anyway, I see I'm almost at a half hour. My gosh. So the Houthis have started launching missiles at ships in the Red Sea. So Saudi Arabia doesn't like that. They're continuing to bombard the Houthis, and that is why you have Israel involved here. Is there anything else I need to say about this? I think that is about it. These missile attacks have just started within the last year or two, so we are about We are about to the present day. I haven't heard if there's anything going on here. It's mostly in a stalemate, but they're all trying to control the Bab el Mandeb Strait right here. Most Djibouti, this little country down here. If someone picks that, you can ask me how they're involved in this if you don't already know. But yeah, it's kind of in a stalemate at the current situation. And yeah, now onto the death toll. This is one of the most catastrophic wars in recent history, and I think total people who have died in the 30,000 about people have died. During all this time, there's a blockade. Saudi Arabia, they decided that they wanted to blockade Yemen, well, keep supplies coming in from the Houthis because they don't want the Houthis to get any supplies to be able to fight more. So they decided to blockade the coasts of Yemen. But there's a problem with that because the world wants to send humanitarian aid because there's a lot of people starving because there's a war going on. And so that makes the starving problem get worse. And now there's a lot of people dying, a lot of people starving, and there's a massive humanitarian crisis. And Yemen is close to collapse. I can try pulling up the thing right now, but is it? No, this isn't it. No, it's the other one. There's a list or an index, the Fragile States Index. So you basically got this group. They rank all of the countries in the world based on how stable they are. You'll notice that most of the stable countries are in Europe and America. Go America. But if you'll notice here, these are the countries most likely to collapse, and then you have Yemen, second most likely in the entire world. So yeah, things are pretty dire. People dying, countries about to fail, and I will let you decide why that is happening. So that is the end of the video. Thank you for watching, and just one more time, thank you.